Hi everybody and welcome to the development overview of Verto Machina, my little game that I made for the Mirror Game Jam about a month ago. Apologies for the delay, I've been super busy and had some technical issues, but I said I wanted to make this video, so here I am. If you already downloaded the project, I'm sure a lot of the stuff that I'm going to go over, you probably already figured out by yourself. If you're still trying to figure out, is it worth it for me to download it and look around, then this is probably going to be very beneficial. So I'm going to go over the project itself, and I picked a few topics that I think are interesting, such as a few blueprints, and then I'm going to keep in mind some questions that I had on the original thread as I'm going through this. And hopefully it's not going to get too long, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of everything that you need to know if you want to use this project. And I came up with a little list here, handy list of things that we're going to cover in the video. So I'll see if I can put annotations on the YouTube video, but you can have an idea of what we're going to be looking at. So first thing is going to be the quick project overview. It's going to be right here. And the first thing you'll notice is as soon as you open the project is you're going to see there's the first person BP. This is just the standard first person template from Unreal. There's this geometry part, and then there's the actual game under the game folder here. And I've divided my elements in different categories, right? Actors are pretty much all of the blueprints, anything that's interactable, anything that's actually an actor blueprint that is not the player. So if I open the actor blueprints here, we have some components, and I'm going to go over this in a second here. These are actor components, blueprints that you can put onto pretty much any static mesh, any other actor in the level and do stuff. All of the interactive blueprints are here. Things like the door that you're going to see in a second, how it opens, the door switch, jump pads, mirrors, rotation switches, a checkpoint system, the carry objects, which are the cubes that you're going to carry, and things like that, including the mirrors that you're going to see in a second here where you can bounce things around. Obstacles, I literally just have two. Didn't have enough time to create more obstacles. This was supposed to be mostly a puzzle game, but you have the cannon, which can be converted into either a laser or a regular cannon that shoots pretty much what you would shoot. And then the deadly cubes, which is basically a blueprint. If you touch it, you basically die. And then you have the sounds. There's only one thing, is the music players, the actor blueprint that you put on your level that'll actually start playing the specific music based on a data table. And then you have things like tools, which are the pipe builder, which is what you see here. It's a spline based actor where you can just quickly build a little pipe. You have a corridor builder, which is basically what it says, it builds a little corridor. Road builder, which I didn't end up using at the end. And then you have a Blutility, which I will be going over, which is basically the way that you would build your level and try to figure out your puzzles. So you don't have to keep going into play mode back and forth. So that's pretty much it. Let's go over just the main mechanic. The setting up the objects to be swapped, and what the heck is the main mechanic here. So basically the whole point of the game is, I'm gonna click play here, is that everything that you can basically shoot two objects in the level and switch their location and rotation. So if I shoot this object here, you can see that it's going green and it has the little mirroring keyword on the top left. I shoot it here again and now it's purple, and I right click and the objects change size for a specific amount of time, and in this case it's 10 seconds, and when the time is up they switch back. That's pretty much the main idea here. So how do you set up, how come when I shoot these blocks nothing happens, and what about when I shoot these blocks nothing happens? So basically the way you would set it up is you grab any object, so let's just do it here for this cube. You have to make it movable, and then when you go into the collision settings, I've created a custom collision preset. Sorry, no collision preset. I have a custom object type, which is called switchable. Right? So you have to go into the presets and make it custom, make the object type switchable, and at that point, if you click play here, then you can see that now I can actually switch it. So that's all it takes, and obviously it doesn't have the right color, but that's just aesthetics, right? In my case, in my game, anything that was switchable, I decided to give it this material here. So then I would come here and I would probably give it the same material, and then if I were to do it the same, again, it has to be movable, same material, and if you go here, you would go custom, and then you would do switchable. And now you can switch them. Simple as that. So that's how the main mechanic works. You can pretty much select any object, and the way you would do it is I'm using the transform. So the transform of the object has the location, rotation, and scale. I did not use the scale because to me it didn't make much sense gameplay wise, but you can use the scale if you want to. So one of the important things that you need to notice is the rotation of the object when you're switching mechanics. So right now their rotation is pretty much the same, right? If these two objects, the X is going this way and the X is going this way. So in this case it'll just switch the objects, but the rotation will stay the same. If I were to rotate this 90 degrees this way and I hit play, notice how this object is now rotated 90 degrees, because again it's inheriting the rotation from the previous object. So keep that in mind as you're going through things like this. Okay, so that's the basic mechanic and how you can make an object switchable. Level linking, let's just do a quick overview. I think I did that before, but some people were asking me exactly how do I set up my levels, right? So if you go here to the levels folder, you'll see that I have level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which was kind of an empty level. Then I have level main menu and things like level test, which is this level here. So all it is if you go to, let's see here, actors, nope, not actors, sorry, data tables here, and you open DT levels, you'll see that I have a data table here, and it has a few things, right? So the key or the unique identifier here, which is on the left, is the actual file name for the level. So that's really important, right? So level test, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And then the next thing is level music, right? So if I'm in level test, the key is literally level test, the row name. The level music is the level that will actually play, and this is just a sound cue. You can just select it from anywhere, sound cue. The level display name right here, and this is going to display what's going to show up when you complete the level, right? So when you complete the level, it says level complete. Whatever you put in here is going to appear, and then the next level needs to be the actual file name of the level, right? So in this case, level 1 is literally called level 1 here. Though the level can be called whatever for purposes of the display name. But that's basically how you set it up, right? So you're in level test. If I go and complete this level, it'll say level test. So let's just do a quick change here. If I change this to testing, just to give you an idea of how that works, and I come here, I'm just gonna switch it over to current camera, and I come up here and I go to here, then you can see at the top says testing completed, right? That's the display name of the level, and then after a certain amount of time it loads level 1, right? This is the level 1, and as you can see I'm going up, then it goes forward. So that's how you would set it up. It's all driven by this data table, which means that it's very, very easy to come up with new levels really, really quickly, right? So let's say that from here I wanted to go straight to level 4, right? So all I would need to do here is literally come here and say, well, instead of level 1, take me to level 4, next level. Save the data table, go back here, click play, and as you can see, it says testing complete, and then it'll literally just take me to level 4. And you can see here this is level 4 with the mirrors. Right? So, yeah. So that's the general idea. With this system, you should be able to come up with the structure of your levels very, very easily. The downside is that you cannot modify it at runtime, unfortunately, but that's just a compromise, right? So what happens is that if you look at this blueprint level complete, all this is doing is calling the event clear, and then it's going through the music player, playing whatever you said was the music on event stage clear. Then it's looking at the current level, right? And then using that current level is using that to find the row name on the data table, right? So current level is level test. So then it's coming here and saying, okay, well, find the row with the row name level test. That's how it finds this row. And then, oops, here. Then it says, okay, well, I found the row name, break the row, and then you can find the display name, which is then displayed, and then the next level, which is then used on the open level blueprint here after a specific delay, and that delay is whatever you specify here is 5 seconds. So this is basically the system, right? So just make sure you set up your levels correctly here. If something is not found, what's going to happen is literally here, nothing will happen literally, because it's going to come out here and says row not found. And right now you could put an error message or you could put a default behavior, but right now if it doesn't find the level, then nothing happens, right? It would just literally do nothing. So that's the idea here, right? And if you were to add a new level, right? So I have level 5, so let's just add a new row here. And then new row, let's call this level 5. And then in level 5, let's just play, let's play this music. Doesn't really matter. And then this is level 5. And then next level, well, let's go back to level test. And then from level 4, instead of level main menu, we'll go to level 5. And click save. And you can see here by looking at these two columns here, from level test takes you to level 4. Well, let's change that to level 1. From level 1 takes you to level 2. Level 2 takes you to level 3. Level 4 to 5. 5 to level test. Right? So that's a very, very quick way of creating your levels and setting it up here. Right? So just create your levels, name them correctly, and then come here and change this table. And all you would need to do is literally just drop the, just play the level, drop the level complete blueprint on your level, and you have to basically do nothing. Just drop it in. You can change the materials, and then it'll automatically work. It's as simple as that. And that's the whole idea, is speed. And if you want to change the levels for whatever reason, then all you need to do is just change the information in this data table here. Cool. Okay, so let's look at some blueprints that I think are really interesting to look at here. Blueprint usage. This is, again, pretty self-explanatory, but again, maybe you can't figure something out or you can't figure out the logic, but some fun things like the jump pads. I'm not going to open the blueprint, but if you select the jump pad here, most of the information is under the setup tab, so you can just look at it like that. But there's basically two things: activation delay, how long it'll take to activate, and then the strength. This is basically using launch character, so you'll have to do some testing here. And the direction is the direction of this arrow, right? So right now, if I were to click play here, after half a second, it'll launch my character by 1200 force in the direction of the arrow. So I could change this to, I don't know, 4000, whatever. And after half a second, it'll just launch me with a strength of 4000, right? So you do have to play around with this, and obviously the activation delay. But the cool thing is, here in the inspector, go to arrow, which is inherited. You can press E or the, to rotate, and you will literally just have to rotate this arrow. That's it. And then after the arrow is rotated, it'll just launch you in the direction of the arrow, as you can see here. So if you're trying to do some intricate things like I did in level 2, where you're going from jump pad to jump pad, it's going to take some testing. But all you need to do is drop this blueprint, rotate the arrow to wherever you want it to go, set up the delay, and set up the strength. And that's pretty much it. Right, in this case, my arrow was a little low, which is why it's not doing what it's supposed to do here. So I think it was like this. Probably. Yep, that's it. So that's pretty much all there is to it for the jump pad. And again, if you want to open the blueprint, it's mostly used in launch character. Okay, moving platforms. I didn't get to use them much in the game, but they're really fun. And this is the blueprint right here, moving platform. And again, it's pretty simple. It's using timelines. I'm just gonna open it here. It's using timelines, you can see here, to go front and back. So timeline forward, timeline backwards. There's a delay that you can select how long, before it starts going forward, delays before it starts going backwards. And all it's using is the start location and then the target location, and it's lerping through, I believe, is 4 seconds is the original length of the timeline. So if I were to hit play here, you can see that it's just going up and down in this case. And if you click on the blueprint, you'll notice that you have this target location identifier here, and it's literally just the location, right? So if you wanted to move this way, you could just literally move it this way, click play, and you'll see now that it's actually moving towards that vector. And you can manually set the target location here, but honestly, the reason why I have it like this is because it's so much easier to visualize. Do you want it to go, from here to here because you want the player to be able to maybe step here? You can do it like that. Forward and backwards delay is what I showed you in seconds. The play rate is also interesting because, again, if you hover here, you'll see the forward play rate is 1%, right? 100%, and it takes 4 seconds. So if you want this to move really fast, maybe you can double the play rate or quadruple the play rate. Let's say 4 times, and then you can do the forward delay 2 seconds. So it's gonna stay for 2 seconds before moving. And now, if you let's just save here, if you click play, you'll see that it just moves really quickly, stays there, and then goes down slower because the play rate to go backwards was slower, right? So if I jump in here, takes me here really quickly, and then just goes down. So you do have a lot of control over, the speed, right? So play rate for forward was 4 times, right? So that's basically 1 second, right? Because the timeline was 4 seconds. And backwards is play rate of 1. You can choose pretty much any static mesh, and then you can make it active or inactive, right? You see a lot of this in my blueprints. If it is inactive, obviously nothing will happen. It'll just stay like this. And the reason why I do that is because you might want to have something inactive at first, and then through your own blueprints or a trigger, make something active, right? So you can have a little switch somewhere that maybe after you complete a puzzle, it automatically activates the platform, and now you can progress through the level, right? So if you don't need it to go here to progress, this platform set up to go up there, it is by default inactive. You can make it active after you complete certain part of a puzzle, for example. Yeah, pretty simple. There's also the possibility of switching the platform, though I didn't really test it that well. So it's still kind of buggy, right? So if I wanted to switch it, let's say with this cube, you can actually switch it, and you can see that the platform switches, but I never got enough time to look at the actual offset, right? So I did it in a way that it is an offset as opposed to a specific location, so you can switch it with another object. However, when you do switch it, you can see it's a little buggy. Um, there's still some work to be done, and I didn't have enough time before the game jam to fix that. So that's something that you could look at and see how I'm doing the switching. I think that was going to be one of the more fun elements of the game, but I just didn't have enough time to pretty much finish the blueprint. So I just did it as a static blueprint. I didn't allow any switching. All right, I gotta do a quick cut here, but when we come back, we're gonna look at doors, switches, lasers, the Blutility, and then we're gonna look at the rest of the project. All right, so I'll be right back in a second. Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry for that cut. Had to do a few things. But yeah, let's keep going here. So we looked at the moving platforms. Now the next one's the doors. So the doors are just simple blueprints, and you can just, everything's kind of part of the same blueprint. The frame and the door itself is part of the same blueprint, and you can just drop it in the level. And the doors have two different modes. If you look here in the inspector panel, you'll have door type, you have proximity, and you have switch, right? So the default one is proximity, and you can see here the trigger on this side and on this side. So if you choose proximity, you can have an open delay, a close-in delay, and a play rate. And again, this is also using timelines, and the timeline is about 2 seconds. Right, so if you put a play rate of 1, that means that it'll actually open. It'll take 2 seconds to open. So if I click play here and I get close, you'll see that it takes two seconds to open, and then as soon as I leave the trigger, it closes. Right, so this is kind of the most basic part of the door. Opens and closes. The second one is just by using a switch. And this is the original setup I had here. So you can see here that I have a door switch. It's a separate blueprint. And all it is exactly what it is. You drop it in the level. You select whether it's active or not. You can change the materials here. And all you need to do here is reference which door is connected to the switch. So in this case, you can see that this switch is connected to door VP. And now you change the actual door VP to switch type, and then it will not use the proximity stuff, right? So now if you click play, obviously it doesn't do anything. You have to actually press the switch, and you'll see that it opens and then it closes immediately as soon as the switch is exited. Now in this case, you'll notice that because the door takes 2 seconds to open and close, if you were to do this, the player can just sprint past the door, right? So to remedy that, what I did is I made the play rate 8 times. So it opens and closes super fast, right? So now you can't just open and then sprint, it'll close immediately. So what you need to do in this case is, what you'll see in a bit, is grab one of these blocks and drop them in here to keep the door open. But that's pretty much how you set it up. Super simple. Select the door type and opening, closing delay, play rate. And if you want, you can use this delay in the switch. By default, it doesn't have a delay. I found that most times you don't want a delay, you want the door to respond immediately. But you can use a delay if you want as well. Cool. Alright, so we got a few different types of switches that I want to go through. So if we go to Actors Interactive, the first type of switch is what I call the actor switch. And all this does is, it literally is the exact same code that I have as a player to switch objects. This basically switches objects. So if you click on it, and you can see on the inspector, there's a little trigger here. You can select whether it's active or not. Pretty much all the blueprints have that. Again, you want to disable or enable it. You have an active material and inactive material, and then you just reference 2 actors. And these can be literally any actor that's set to movable, right? So it doesn't have to be a specific class. Anything in your level that is set to movable, you can now switch. So you can see here actor editor cube 27, which is this one here, and 28, which is this one here. So all it is as soon as you step on it, it'll switch the actors here. And notice that it stays switched. Whoops. For me to switch them back, I have to step on it again. So this is more like a permanent switch, right? So the player can switch for a specific amount of time and then they reverse. So it's like a time mechanic. This is just switching the switching the actors permanently. So that's the actor switch. I already talked about the door switch, which is this one here. It's exactly what it is. It's used to connect to a door. There is also the rotation switch, which you can see an example here. And all this does is rotate an actor, right? So if you click on it, active, you can have the active material, inactive material, and you can select any rotating actor. In this case, it's just a mirror, which is mirror number 2 here, you can see. But all it is, and then you can have the rotation scale. So you want it to rotate on which axis and by what speed. So in this case, I said, okay, I want you to rotate this mirror in the Z axis, right? So it's rotating right from side to side. And this is again just one use case. So you step on it and then the mirror just rotates by that speed. That's all there is to it. You can select pretty much again any actor and it'll just rotate it, and you can choose, you know, the speed. Let's say 10 for example. It's kind of crazy, and you can see that it just rotates insanely. Again, this is the idea here, is that you'll have maybe mirrors that are not aligned properly, right? And then you have to align the mirrors so then you can bounce your shots correctly. Okay, let's see. And there's the timer switch. Now, do I have a timer switch? Let's go here. There's this other kind of switch, and I call it an auto switch, which is the same thing as the actor switch, but it's doing it automatically on a timer, right? So the actor switch, you step on it and it'll switch the actors permanently. This, however, and I'm gonna step on here and just click play, this is basically switching the actors every 5 seconds. In this case, you can see it's switching this guy and that guy over there every 5 seconds permanently. So think about it, if you build a room and you want the ceiling and the floor to switch constantly, maybe every 2 seconds, every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds, then you can definitely do that. And this is something that I unfortunately couldn't play with too much. I did an example in level 2 where you can see that when you're kind of going through and there are 2 meshes that are shifting, but this is again super simple, but it has in my opinion really fun implications of what can be switched. Yeah, and then there's the proximity switch, which I don't have here. Let's see, I don't think I have proximity switch. I do, okay. Right here. And you can see, okay, so here's the proximity switch. And this is exactly the same concept, except it uses a trigger. So when you go into the trigger, it'll switch the 2 actors. And you have the option of switching only once or switching every single time you overlap. So if I click play here and I go into this area, notice that these 2 cubes changed. I exit the area, I go back in, and nothing happens. If I go back here and untick switch once, oops, and click play, then they switch, I leave the area, I come back, and they switch again. Right, so pretty handy. Again, these are all super simple mechanics, but you can think about if you ever wanted to create new levels and just play around with it, you can combine the actor switches, right, which are permanent, versus the proximity ones, which is when the player gets to a specific area, then some actors switch. You know, you can play around with some puzzles there, or you can have it on a timer, right? If you want, you know, to have like a time attack type thing, where the player has to traverse an area and the level keeps switching, right? So imagine you can make crazy things. I just didn't have time, right? You can have the floor switch with a wall, the ceiling switch with the other wall, and you can have different sections switching with different things. Another crazy thing is you can have the same actor selected more than once, so you can have several switches play with the same actors here, which I never got a chance to do. You can go crazy with the amount of permutations here. But again, this is just super simple mechanics, iterating on the same concept of switching the location and the rotation of two objects in the level. Okay, laser. This was added later on, and you can see them here. And it's a super simple blueprint. There's two modes that I have. There's one where is and you can see cannon type, shot or laser. So this is shot and this is laser. Look at the difference here. So shot basically just shoots the same thing that you're shooting basically. And the idea here was that maybe you can attach this to a rotating platform or a rotating cube, and then you can use one of these switches to rotate the laser or the cannon, and then this cannon would shoot into a mirror, for example, and then this would actually bounce off the mirror. So in other words, you could have some kind of elaborate setup where you know, the shots are bouncing from mirror to mirror, and it doesn't have to be shots coming from you, right? You can use the shot here, and you can see it doesn't really do anything for the player. It's not harmful for the player. This was more like, can you use it for a puzzle? I never got a chance to finalize it and fix it, so you may have to play around with it if you need to use it. And this setting, which is laser, is instantly harmful, right? So if you touch the laser, you die. And you say restarting simulation, that just calls event dead, and it just kills you instantly. And this is just using a ray trace to, let me just hit simulate here, to calculate the size of the laser. So obviously you can see in simulate it it basically resizes to the nearest mesh, and you can see it's not perfect. I never got it perfect, but it's close enough that for the purposes of the game, it should be doable. Okay. Blutility. Okay, this is actually really important. So a lot of the times, let me just open a level here, maybe level 2. So a lot of times you'll be working on a puzzle, right, in a room like this, and you need to figure out, you know, what's possible. What can the player do when switching elements? And it's usually very handy to see how that mechanic works when you're in editor. So say that you wanted to know, okay, what happens if the player switches these two blocks, right? So I can just hit play here, and I'm just going to switch this guy and this guy, and then I can see exactly what happens. And then you can try to create your puzzles that way. What if they switch this and they're in this area? What happens? So what I did is I went to and created a little Blutility, and actually it's probably here in the level. Yep, Blutility, you can see it right here. And all this does is it allows you to switch elements in editor without having to run the game, right? So it basically helps you create the puzzles, right? So if you wanted to know what happens if these two blocks switch, you can come here, and all that is, you know, you select this actor, select it, and select the second one, and then come down to Blutilities and just run event switch actors, and it'll just switch it, and run it again, and keep running it. That's all there is to it, but it's a huge time saver, because when you're trying to build the puzzles, remember, you have to take into account the rotation of the actors as well, and not only just the actual actors. So you can go through the level and see, you know, really quickly by selecting the actors here in the Blutility, exactly what happens when the actor or the player tries to switch different cubes, right? So, okay, so that's what happens if he switches this. But what if he switches this and this, right? Okay, well, run the Blutility, right? You come back here, you run it, and you can see here really quickly what happens. If they decide to switch it, this happens. And you can see here that it also switches not only the platform or the cube here, but anything that is a child of that cube. And that's really important when you're setting up your level, right? So the cool thing is, oops, here you can see here that on my outliner here, switch cube 3 has a jump pad as a child. So that's how you switch, you know, how you can make complex things happen, right? So this is a child of, jump pad is a child of switch cube. So anytime you manipulate switch cube, it takes the jump pad with it, right? And this is the same principle if I come all the way here to this part where, notice, let me just, I'll just come here real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. Look at this setup, right? How this basically is switching back and forth. Look at the floor and the wall here. They're basically switching. And all this is a timed actor. Let me see if I can find it. I have to look for it. But all this is how are you doing all these complicated things? You have to find, in this case, the parent, which is switchable block 24. Notice that everything else is a child of switchable block 24. So when you're looking at switching an actor in the level, remember you can only choose one. Choose the parent, and that will switch everything else that comes with it, right? So this is a timer switch, and it's switching this parent with another parent which is on the side. And when you switch this, you're switching pretty much everything else that is underneath. And that's how you can get complex things to switch, right? So you can have the entire floor with a bunch of stuff on the floor switch to the ceiling. So you have to have everything parented to one specific actor. So that's really important to know. It's how you set it up. It has a huge effect on how the game is played. Cool. Okay, blueprint. Let's go back to level test. Sure, save. And these are some components. So I've also created some actor components, and these are super simple, but again, this is just to add functionality to the elements. These are just plain cubes. You can see editor cubes that I switched to movable, and all I did is I've added, in this case, comp gravity. Right, so I have this cube, I literally added comp gravity, and you can see here, you just literally drag it here, and all this does is, if it's active, as soon as you hit the actor, it'll wait, in this case, 1 second, and it'll activate gravity, right? In other words, it'll start simulating physics. And then when you are out, when you leave the platform, or you know, are no longer overlapping it, it'll reset after, in this case, 3 seconds. So if I'm here and I click play and I jump on it, after 1 second, it just starts, as you can see here, it starts simulating physics, and then 3 seconds later, it jumps back up. Same here, same here. And you can see it just goes back up. This can be applied to pretty much anything. You know, you could grab this column, make it movable, and then go into comp gravity. And if I click play, as long as I hit it, I believe, it starts, oops, simulating physics, I think. Well, oops. Okay, so maybe the collisions is not allowing it to do it, but you get the point. Just select a simple mesh, make it movable, and then you can basically simulate physics. Comp instant death, exactly what it sounds like. You know, it makes something, if you touch it, it kills you instantly. Instant death. And I don't even think there's anything here. Yeah, you just die. So you can see I'm literally just touching the component and I die immediately. So that's all it is. So if you have a spikes mesh, if you have like the death cubes, literally just have the component instant death on it. And you die immediately upon touching it. And component rotate does exactly what it says. In this case, you have this again, cube, editor cube with the component rotate, and then you put it interval. So it's not using tick, because I like to keep things consistent. Always a good idea to use timers instead. So it's a very, very fast timer. This is the interval. Every 0.05 seconds, it'll rotate in by 10 in the z-axis. So if I click play, you can see that it's rotating here. If I jump on it, then obviously I'm rotating with it. So you can do, you know, any kind of rotation. Obviously, you can like 40 in the Y, and then it just goes crazy. Right. But that's pretty much it, right? So again, super simple. If you wanted to use this principle, you can open these guys and see how I did it. It's very simple. You bind to the on-hit event on the parent actor, and then you can just do whatever you want. So that's pretty much it. Modifying mechanics. Okay, so a couple of things, and this is more digging into the code. So one thing that you'll notice is when you're trying to pick up an actor, you'll see here that this is just a carry object. There is a what is it? A boolean here says can carry or not. It has to be true, otherwise you can't carry it. And the reason for that is maybe you want to have a cube like this being able to be carried, but maybe not this big guy here. If you make this true, then you can carry this massive thing, and it really depends on your game. So you can change it, and basically if you don't want that check, you can just pretty much carry anything. And in this case, you know, it doesn't really matter. But for my game, I didn't want something so big to be allowed to be carried. So a couple of things here. If I go back here, let's see. Here it is. Just to nope. Let's go back to the event graph. A couple of things I did want to share. Actually, let's start with the dash. So this was earlier on, and you'll notice here that it's not connected. But right now, if you click play and you press jump when you're in the air, you'll just do a double jump, and it's just doing one. So if you ever wanted to modify that, you can go out here and you can say total air jumps, and you can change this value. So right now it only allows you to do one. You can make this number anything you want. So say 3. You're allowed to do 3 jumps, and you can see that I am now doing 3 jumps, and then it stops. So I invite you to look at the way I did it, the code. You can make this anything you want. 10, right? And I had the idea of having power-ups later in the game, basically doing up to 10, and eventually that's it, 10. I had the idea of doing power-ups in the game and allowing the player to do eventually a double jump. Never had enough time. Another thing which is really cool was, if you ever played the old Mega Man X games, Mega Man used to have an air dash. And actually, if you play something more recent like Ori and the Blind Forest, I think Ori has an ability where you can air dash front. So that's actually what I did here, right? So instead of you doing a straight up launch in the Z and the Z axis 600 up, what you can do is you can connect this here, and you can put whatever velocity, let's say 1,000, and all this is doing is looking at the forward vector of the camera. So basically, wherever you're looking, and it's launching you in the direction of where you're looking. And in this case, I would probably override X and Y as well. So look at the difference now. If I ever wanted to do that, if I jump and I'm looking front, I'm actually going forward. And if I jump and look up, I actually go up. And if I jump and look down, I actually look down. So, you know, and of course, what I did here is I try to modify the gravity scale. So if you ever wanted to go that route, maybe you want the gravity to be less. And then you'll have to do something like this. So for example, reduce the gravity and make the gravity 0, for example, just for the duration of the launch. If you wanted a full-blown, like, you know, you can see there, then I'm just going full on without any gravity. I noticed that it's kind of hard to balance because you kind of need to know where you're looking, and because it's first person, it's a little bit hard to do. But it can be done, as you can see here, if you really want to do that. I personally found that it was just easier to just do a straight up jump. I'm just going to disconnect it here, but you have the ability to do that. So just putting that out there. If you ever wanted to change that mechanic, you can. Here in another event, this is the event shoot ray event. This is where when you press the left mouse button, you will shoot a ray, a line trace, and depending on the type of object that you hit, it's gonna either grab it or not, or try to switch it. So there's a little variable called max carry distance here, and this is the distance that it allows you to basically grab something. So right now it's 150. So if I come here and I shoot at this cube, it's actually hitting it, but it's not doing anything because I'm really far. So I have to come really close and then I can grab it. But I could always change this to something like 500. If you ever wanted to have a completely different feel for the gameplay, you could do something like that, and I can try to grab it from much farther. There you go, 500. See? So it really depends on what you want to do. You can make this 2000, right? If you want it. So obviously, for purposes of my game, that didn't make any sense, but you can see that now you can play around with the distance and you can bring it here and do what you need to do. Right, so now the cube's really far. I need to bring it here. I can just bring it, drop it there, and just keep going. So another little tidbit, max carry distance. That is the distance that basically you're allowed to carry an object. Let's see. There's one more thing I did want to mention, and it is here, event switch. So this is, if you look at the code, you'll notice something kind of strange here. Every time you want to switch objects, you change the movement mode to falling. And the reason for that is actually a limitation on Blueprint. When the character class is standing on something, on any actor, it makes that actor its base. So if that actor immediately changes position, I guess the way the class is coded, the character will move with that actor itself, giving the illusion that it's porting with the actor. If you remember some of the earlier videos that I had, when you would switch the actor, the character would switch with the original actor, and this is the reason why. And if you're doing it in C++, you can just set, and I think I found, you can set the base to null, and then it'll solve the problem. Obviously, I wanted to keep this in Blueprint. I didn't want to make it a C++ thing. So the only way I found, or the quickest workaround I found, was to literally make this set movement mode to falling, and that would automatically clear the set base. So again, one of those little workarounds that you don't think about, but if I were to skip this, right, say, forget it, you don't have to do this, notice what happens here. If I switch it and I'm on top, then notice that I am now here instead of falling, right? And then I'm back here. So if you want that mechanic, right, so you can kind of teleport with the cube, you can do that. In my case, I didn't want that mechanic. So now, just by forcing the movement mode to be reset or set it to falling, now when I click on play, and I jump on top of this guy, notice that I'm still here. However, you can see that the player looks like it's about to fall. You can see that how the animation is almost like you're falling, right? Because it literally is. It's falling for half a second. And that was the only way I could think of that, you know, that you could make the switch and not have the player teleport. So it may seem weird, but this is just a workaround in terms of blueprints. All right, and last part, I know this video has gone on really long, but if you ever wanted to create levels, this is how I would do it. Go to the levels folder, and I already have a little level called level template. If you open it, it already has all of the different elements that you would need to create a level, right? So it already has a sample room. If you click play here, it already has a sample room with the ceiling and the floor, exactly the same setup. The door is set to use proximity, so all you need to do is build the walls here, and it already has a gold blueprint here. And the way I did it is for performance reasons. These walls are actually instant static meshes, so it's basically hierarchical instant static mesh using this wall mesh here. You can use anything you want, but in this case, I will vouch I am using the instance tool from Nate, and that allows me to select individual instances in the editor, and I can just duplicate them like I would any other mesh. You can see here, if I go back to the editor and click play, then you can see how I'm extending the wall. Every single cube here is an instant static mesh, and the reason I did that is because then you do have the ability to, you know, modify it and make some interesting things happen. You can see here with the floor tiles. It's a huge time saver. Obviously, you don't need it, but if you don't have the plugin, then it's going to be super painful because you'll have to come to the list here and manually change the transform. All right, hopefully I covered everything. If you have any other questions, do let me know. Again, sorry that it took me so long, but I did want to make this video in case you're still doubting whether this is going to be an interesting project or not. You know, here it is. If anything else comes up, just you know, you can post a question on the comments on the video, or I'm going to be monitoring the thread on the Unreal Engine forums. Let me know what you think, and hopefully this has been useful, and the project has been hopefully for those of you guys that downloaded, hopefully it's been an interesting learning template, and you know, to teach you how I did certain things like, you know, the level linking, the saving system, some of these mechanics. It was super fun to make. Just a word of warning, the code is messy because again, I was trying to do this in 3 weeks. So I'm sure if you go through the code, you'll find many of the things I did, you can probably do it in a much cleaner way. But for the time being, I'm pretty happy how it turned out. And I'm hoping that it helps someone out there as they're trying to do you know, similar mechanics. So let me know what you think.